Is unmuted, yes. Live on Facebook. Ai, sayang sana nakanggo.
Na technology sa tungo nungu eka. Iya. Tiko kina.
Lei.
Isa. O klan dia sana reda na mo telefon. Cukup tahu na mo telefon ni. Oh iya sa on ko. Oh santo no. Wow, totoka. Okay. Iya, kelas satu dalam masalah ko. Wow. Okay, totoka talaga na tal-tal sa tungorinda kumu. Doon sa rin Vinaka din. Kaya wala ka na mo wale. O sana laksar ngayon eh. Basta na pakawelti ko may biyaw eh. Oh, iya, oke. Oke, review untuk sana siya matiko na ibola mata. Awa, mau yung matangaki na batutolo. Iya. Oh, iya, sa tiko busar nga. Oh, iya. Sarabang bulot tuming ko na bibakani. Oke, review untuk sana siya matiko na ibola mata. Isa. Iya. Oh, iya, sa tiko busar nga. Oh, iya. Sarabang bulot tuming ko na bibakani. Iya, senimbolo Vinaka na biakan ini siya matikumay nanonda veitalanoa na Vinaka ni kuwa. Iya. Iya, totok sarva kauti na ulutanga ndingi takitiko menda na veitalanoa kina na kabani kuwa. Tau manda bikinta baki kemnito doko na veiwekani na vese burubura oni siya matikumay na nero na veitalanoa tiko na kabani kuwa ke DWAIN KULOVAKI. Klani bunga sarabike mni oni sa sarabati kumain na viala sa mbiuyani ena mataka ni kuwa lebu talaga na bata taro rangwale tikumai ena non ravina kata merakila na kurongo na dhava mande wuna tali kina na dhava na wuna kawabo kina na loma ni tini na sana ena veiyasai Viti sato tokan dina na dhaka ni dhaka batiko DWAIN au klavir na sa sia matiko mingo na ibola mata unitaka ni na veitalanoa ni kuwa na dona veitalanoa na veungeti kina na se mate lebu na bibakani na somo talanga bunga na taro au kla talanga wa DWAIN sa mbutuka bunga na bibanua na veiyasai Viti kongola kina na kai Vinaka ni kuwa DWAIN meteka butaka na nondaru veitalanoa ona kere muni baka madal teke muni manda be ke mami na baka rongo tiko yani ena bonua ni da butumekina.
Nossa, nak vale vo terisi. Nevango o gifni DWAIN atong galovaki. Au mai na KURO Salia, mai Nayau ilau. Ia o tinango maram ni China. Iyo. Au sa ochingo na tinna embaki au dakdak chuki nangoi na tambani maroi au bula. Au tekbui na Matanitu na tambani housing. O chau sa manito kisare na doa NGO. O chau sa mani mai atu tungo i Kasabia's PTE Limited. Meu liutak na program ko na tambani kaustovu wavo ki lamni veikoresa Viti. Iyo. Ya awa vuliki na Nogo University awa vuliki na mai New Delhi India. Awa redangona na stovungo lever na ka India vambimbi ver na tu yawa irndo vangtak na stovungo sini lev na kena kumbo endo mbuta totol na kakana na ngona wari na kina na embaki 2011 beka na ngona use buli tu i India ya na nugu lesuma India ya usamai maroetu na vakasamango me ndona ngona me rauni vaka umai na stobungo e Viti. Iyo. Sama volek tungo e tina embaki nungu maroetu na vakasamango. me roni dona singa, me roni kau mai sona stovu, me kauavo ki lomni vei koro kede sai viti na me kautanga ver na vasu, na chuko i rambi, na chuko i kioa, na kai rotuma, na kai Papua New Guinea, na kai Solomoni ko sa main biutungo i viti ya.
Iyo. Isa. Totoko baka ti DWAIN na nung do saraba tiko na numitamba and na numu do ngale wabu kene bisibit kina nonra mata mamaraw na marama. Oya ito na ka tareu baka levu balete ni nanungu tamba ni taka tarangai na bal ni yung marroy on do lakwabu kina buku ni bandindike ni vei kamakau. On do talitaka na vei siko na vei koro. Ya roni pa madal takamanda na itubo ni namundo ngole na vei viti. Ya teka buteke badaba na kena tuvani sa na bonoda mundo ngole kina. O tianga roni pa madal takamanda na bonua dhakatumikina na kurongo. Mo semelis talimbe ka India kena semelis mai kiviti.
Nak vale ba. Kila sa vida pek na embaki go. Sa vivia ono na embaki. Kito sa sanga chuko na kena ivola, na kena proposal me Vinaka me vakavir na UN ver keda na donors me ra fantaka mai na program go me vakau mai viti na stovu.
Yeah.
After about 6-7 years of us, doing the program proposals, as well as, trialing different types of cook stoves with different communities of women, we agreed on these 3 types of cook stoves that we've brought into Fiji. In total, we have 60,000 cook stoves.
Wow, tamani wili level, DWAIN? 60,000.
And all these cook stoves, we will be taking it into every single village, every single farming community, and every single informal settlement in the country. And our aim is to distribute it to those women that predominantly use outdoor fireplaces.
Yes. Sandin. And how do your in terms of your proposal, how do you select the various places that you have to go to in terms of your distribution plan?
So in terms of our distribution plan, like we have a methodology in place to ensure that because the distribution of these cook stoves are free of charge to all of our families, that because it's a carbon offsets program, that we distribute it particularly in the 20 heavily most deforested areas in our country.
Wow.
Now there are 11 of these areas that are on Viti level, and there are 9 of these areas that are on Vanua level and on Taviuni. So, in terms of the science behind it and the methodology, we focus on those emissions reduction program sites to ensure that we can help support the revegetation of those areas by ensuring that families that live there don't need to cut down the whole tree. They can just trim the branches and use that for firewood, because the chamber for these cook stoves is quite small, because you don't need to use a lot of firewood.
Sandina. So there's a science behind it, as you mentioned, and there's also the element of conservation. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think one of the biggest challenges, not only in our global sub-region, but also in the Africas, in the Latin Americas, and so many other global sub-regions around the world, we're still evolving in terms of global environmental policies. And the financial instruments that we're coming up with, these are still, in its infancy. And so it's now upon those of us that operate in this space to make sure that we're at the forefront of these discussions in how we continue to shape and help these financial instruments evolve.
Right.
So,
Wow.
so in terms of the global methodology for how we do this, we focus on those 20 nationally determined emission reduction sites around the country.
Yeah.
But because we were able to secure 60,000 cook stoves, it just meant that we had the opportunity to take this to all 14 provinces around our country and to focus right from those families in the interior of our islands and those, in Lau and all 75 villages in Kandavou, on the 6-7 different islands that form Kandavou, we were able to take these stoves to all of them. And just by mid this month, we've covered all 8 provinces on Viti level.
Wow. And congratulations, to your team, on behalf of everyone all around Fiji, because every time we see your post, it always makes I speak for myself, makes me smile and makes me realize that you are, meeting some of the, the needs of our women in the rural areas of Fiji, and, seeing the smiling faces, of these women, even the pictures of the women in Salia and Ratou and many other pictures that you have posted up, have made us realize how important the work that you and your team, do on their behalf for our country. So my question that I have as well is, with your study in India, how does your study and your connection to the manufacturer of this particular stove, how does it come about? How did it come about, and how did it bring it to this very moment that we are talking and discussing about the manufacturing stove?
So when I studied in India, as part of I attained a diploma in development journalism.
Wow.
From India, and at my university, Jawaharlal Nehru University, which is named after the first Prime Minister of India, they take you to different hotspots around the country to immerse yourself in the development issues that they face as a country. Yeah?
Right.
And I mean, we're talking about a country of over 1 billion people.
Yes.
The whole population of Fiji can fit in one small portion of the capital city. We went to places like Jaipur Fort. Jaipur Fort is the prosthetics organization in India. They develop prosthetics for the poorest of the poor people.
Yes.
And their prosthetics are considered some of the best and most affordable prosthetics in the developing world.
Wow.
They've come across to Fiji to teach us. We've sent our our prosthetics medical professionals to India. Same thing with the Solar Grannies program that Fiji ran previously. Like all of these different programs. When I was there, I had the opportunity to go around and see how a country like India had actually developed, some of the solutions that were homegrown solutions.
Wow.
And for me, apart from the actual studies in India, because there's so much similarity between the countries. It's India. We have Indians that live in Fiji, so there's a lot of cultural similarities. It was an opportunity to learn what can potentially translate from, you know, a civilization that's so old and so advanced like India, and figure out which solutions can work for us here in Fiji, as well as the Pacific. So some of these solutions, you know, when we came to the cook stoves, the 3 different models of cook stoves, the discussion was around, one, ensuring that, you know, these cook stoves are culturally appropriate for our country, because, you know, the types of rocket stoves that we are familiar with here in Fiji, sometimes the designs don't necessarily look like they belong in our kitchens. Some of them look like an L-shaped, you know, rocket. You know, some of them, you know, have confounding parts that don't look like they belong in a village home. They look like they belong in, you know, the structural beams. So it was our job to make sure that when we agreed on the 3 different models of cook stoves that we were going to introduce into Fiji, that the cook stoves was similar to what we culturally are comfortable with, which is the kerosene primus. So these cook stoves, these wood-burning efficient cook stoves, they look very similar to the kerosene primus. They, in terms of weight, they're about the same weight as well. In terms of care and maintenance, they require the same minimal care and maintenance. You know, the only difference here is that it uses a lot less wood than a normal outdoor fireplace would. So like in a lot of places that we've gone back to survey in different villages and in different farming communities and settlements, one of the consistent feedback that we get from different women is, luvengu, na stovungo, tolunga se va na tikinimbuka, mbuta tutol na kakana.
Yes. Wow. So it's really good to hear their direct feedback. Vinaka saranga.
And that's the hallmark of how we know that we are moving in the right direction. We're not completely there, you know, as a country, as a region, you know, as a global marketplace. We're not yet there at a place where we have perfect support systems so that we can migrate our families to much more cleaner, much more affordable cooking fuels, cooking technologies, cooking stoves. So the stoves that we're providing is a step in the right direction.
Sandina, wow, well done. Now you're mentioning about the 3 types of stoves. Would you like to describe the 3 and what are the features and how does it you know, contribute to its effective use by the women in these villages?
Okay, so the first stove that we brought in was the Adarsh cook stove from India. Then after that, we brought in the 4G biomass clean cook stove. And then the third option, the second one was from Vietnam, the 4G biomass. And then the third one, the name will come to me very, very shortly. The third one we also brought in from Vietnam. And so these 3 different cook stoves, you know, we've done our tests, our technical tests in laboratories, both abroad as well as here at the USP in Fiji, to guarantee a certain level of thermal efficiency that qualifies for it to be called a rocket stove or an improved cook stove. And then, you know, now we're at the phase where as we begin to completely distribute all 60,000 cook stoves to 60,000 women all around the country, we will then take time to go back to each of the villages again, each of the farming communities, each of the settlements that we distributed the stoves, you know, in 2021 and 2022, and even into 2023, to make sure that if any of the stoves are damaged, either, you know, as a consequence of, you know, moving, or, you know, as a consequence of, like, say, we just had tropical cyclone Yasa and tropical cyclone Harold before that, that if these stoves are damaged, that we can come in and help you repair it, but that we can also replace those stoves that don't meet the manufacturer's guidelines.
I see. Wow. It's interesting you mentioned India, and then now you also mentioned Vietnam. So these are the two countries that are taking the lead in terms of the manufacturing of these stoves?
Yes, that's correct. You know, at this particular point in time, you know, there were like a lot of people have asked me, you know, why didn't you manufacture those 60,000 stoves in Fiji?
Yeah.
You know, that's a very fair question to ask. You know, and it's important that we have these uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah.
Like for us, the consideration was one, based on cost. You know, does Fiji have the capability and the industry to be able to build these stoves right now?
Right.
Or are we looking at developing this industry and this sector in a way that when we distribute these cook stoves all around the country, we start to also mobilize and support different communities of women that would like to build and would like to sell their own version of the improved cook stove.
Wow.
Kila me sona marama rendo vangtak na nonra stove witumba me vavavi rendo vangtak na lamu levu.
Gore.
So you know, we're still at development phase at the moment, but we're looking at how we can create new jobs in our country in terms of a new industry. And then when we create that industry, for us to be intentional about ensuring that women are the ones that can develop this industry of manufacturing cook stoves and selling it as a community business. You know, we have the existing culture already in our country and in our region where women are the primary household energy managers. They manage the kerosene primers, they manage and the cook stoves outside. You know, they manage the gas stoves. So, you know, for us to make this transition as a country and culturally as well, it's not too much of a leap for us to be able to make those connections as a country to say that this can be a space where, as this 7-year country program evolves, that we can, you know, create some momentum for different groups of women to build their own version. And when they build their own version, that they know that they have, you know, access to support from, you know, those Fijian women that live abroad. You know, one thing I'm always so thankful for is the diaspora. Our diaspora community, we know how to rally behind each other.
Absolutely, yes. The unity, the support, it's amazing, you know, to see all these women with the different parts of the world, they all just come together and get things done.
Oh, absolutely. You know, that's one of the things, you know, that we're starting to develop as a team right now. Our team is made up of Fijians that are from all the provinces in the country. You know, majority of our team members are women, and we're trying to peel back these complex layers around how we develop this space organically.
Wow. And I really like what you mentioned about the ability for women to be, to create innovation, so they, because many women in many villages, they, even though they're housewives or they stay in the village, but many of them, have so much knowledge and hands-on experience, to be able to get out away from their comfort zone and get them into creating, these new ways of doing things. And I really like what you mentioned, that in some villages, some women can, create some new drum-like sitovu. And I know I've seen that in many villages when I usually go and work out there. And it's so encouraging and it's so empowering, on so many levels, to see these women who, may refer to themselves as, I just, ayaw tunga ba na koro, say, ayaw siya ni buli Vinaka, and all those kind of, maybe putting themselves in a very lowly, but what you see is actually the opposite. So, yeah, Vinaka Bakalevu, DWAIN, for you and your team for allowing these women, to be able to be innovative enough to create their own. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's interesting. Something a few months ago, I was talking with a few other young Fijian people that operate in the NGO sector, that work in the UN and all those development agencies.
Yes.
And I was sharing with them. I said, after our team having gone, into so many villages, into so many farming communities, so many settlements. If there's one thing that I know to be true, based off, my firsthand observation, it's that innovation and resilience is pre-existing already in our communities. This is not something new, that is suddenly the flavor of the month for our development sector, to suddenly touch on a community-based resilience. Senga nakango sa tu Makawa. La may liu sa tu. It's because we've gone through so many different waves, so through so many different phases that these priorities get watered down over time, and it is now our shared responsibility, as well as our opportunity to be able to find relevance and and bring it back up, and to bring it back up in a way that makes sense for our communities.
Yes.
Our job just to facilitate, provide the tools and step back.
Yes.
Work our way out of a job.
Yeah, Nasaranga. Wow. Now I have a question in terms of the 60,000 cook stoves. How are they funded? Who are the funders behind this amazing project?
Okay, so these 60,000 cook stoves are
Yeah.
funded by Korea Carbon Management Limited. So it's a Korean carbon trading company. Different, different countries and different multinational companies as well that are considered high polluting or high carbon emitting producers. These countries and these companies, they pay money to different carbon banks and to be able to create carbon offset and carbon sequestration programs in developing countries. Now, this is one of the mechanisms under the UNFCCC, the UN Framework on Climate Change Convention.
I see.
These are one of the UNFCCC mechanisms that allow developing countries like Fiji and like so many other countries around the world to be able to access these funds specifically for carbon sequestration and carbon forestry projects. What we're used to here in Fiji is the Ndrawa block. The Ndrawa block is perhaps our only successful carbon offsets program in the country. You know, because it's a forestry project.
Right.
What we're aiming to do here is to diversify what this particular UNFCCC mechanism and these financial instruments, what they can be used for in terms of carbon offsets programs. So, you know, traditionally in the carbon offset space, it's usually forests, you know, that acquire the verified carbon credits. But in this particular instance, we're going with cook stoves, and 60,000 cook stoves at that.
Wow. Man, so what was the science behind coming towards the 60,000 number or the mark? Was it did you consult with another NGO, or how does the data or that figure came to be?
Okay, so you know, just like when we were determining what type of cook stove to introduce into Fiji,
Right.
there was an entire matrix of factors that we have to consider, you know, and mull through to be able to determine what technology to use. And then once we've got that down pat, what sort of numbers are we going to be investing in? For us, one was the consideration of how many stoves would we need to bring into the country to bring about an actual change. Uh, Another one was based off the global carbon markets in terms of, you know, what would be considered a viable carbon offsets program to be sold internationally, but also to be meaningful to the country that it's being done in. You know, when I was talking with other agencies that have developed cook stove programs in the Pacific, you know, a lot of them spoke about how, oh, you know, we did 200 cook stoves, or we did, you know, we worked with 16 communities, and those 16 communities in the Northern Pacific, you know, there was about 500 families. So when we were part of the consideration for coming up with the 60,000 was looking at the total number of households in all 1,193 villages in Fiji. It was also looking at the total number of farming physical houses, as well as the informal settlements in our country, and also looking at adding an additional number of stoves so that we could partner with different other organizations like the Korepita Model Town Trust just outside of Lautoka. It's a whole new feeling to be able to, you know, have the empowerment, you know, as a country program manager, as a young person, as a young leader, you know, as a community worker, to be able to pick up the phone and call them to tell them that we would like to deliver stoves to all of their residents.
Wow.
Killer, like I remember, like the conversation with Korepita was, you know, how many of your families utilize outdoor, you know, fireplaces? And so they were saying, oh, you know, DWAIN, if you can give us 40 or 60, like that would be more than enough. And, you know, Korepita is one of the most successful models for low-income housing, not just in Fiji, but around many other countries as well. So, you know, in the discussions with them, it was around saying, how many families do you have in Korepita? And then when they told us it was 242 families, we told them, fine, thank you. We will, you know, let's arrange a date for us to come down, and the Kasabia's, you know, delivery vehicles will come and deliver all the stoves to the families, and Our community engagement officers will come and train, your community leaders within Korepita on how to use the stoves properly, on how to champion the use of these stoves with the other women in the Korepita community. And also importantly, to make sure that the safety component, our burns unit at the hospitals receive a lot of patients every day, every week, every month that deals with burns from cooking, skin burns from cooking. So through this our community training on how to use the stoves, we also touch on things like safety, on the health component of using less sugar, less salt, less noodles, if not no noodles in the cooking. Like these are the things that our community trainers speak with the women on.
Wow, man, it's really awesome to see, what other, fields of, like in this case, health. And as we know with NCDs, and which is a big issue, in Fiji and also in many other countries in the Pacific, this is really awesome to look at safety as well as nutrition included in your training. How has the training been? When you actually do the actual training in some of the villages, DWAIN, what was what are the common responses from the women after the training?
So, in some of the villages, when we go in, we usually demonstrate right there and there how to, like we pull one of the brand new stoves out of the box. We
Right.
ask them, "Kir ndoli tumik sonam buka,"
Good.
and we ask them, light the stove in front of us. O they tu sana raisi nona vale se dona tinimbul macau se kila se sana tavioka kota mai me kito
Misaka.
me vasa kila. And they see how quickly the water boils, how quickly the food cooks, and then they regurgitate the same sort of feedback that we've been consistently getting. That tolu se vanga na tiki ni mbuklelei, buta totol na kakana.
Yes. Yes, and I think one thing you've also highlighted as well is, the essence of time,
Yeah.
because one thing is, collecting the mbuka and then to wait for the mbuka to, catch fire. O ta sangay la kono vakasanga, ronit to Nayau. But now this stove has cut the time, right? So the length of time that they spend on a normal stove that they normally use before is less. I'm sure they must be so excited about that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the feedback from women has
Yeah,
been absolutely phenomenal, and just the generosity of their thankfulness for the program that we're running in the country,
yeah.
but also from our side to be able to remind them that it's because of them that we have a job.
Yes.
Just I think it's that component of understanding that for those of us that have the opportunity to receive an education,
Mm,
that for those of us that have the opportunity to be able to communicate confidently, even when we don't know everything,
yeah.
that we have a responsibility to be uh, what I usually call benchmark raising ancestors. We
Yes.
need to set that benchmark extremely high, because the work that we do today, as young people, as leaders in our respective field, is based off the sacrifices and the pioneering work by those generations before us. You know, I had this interesting passing conversation with one of my aunts, and she said, "Wale, kem do na millennials, kem do na consultants." You know, and I laughed, and then I stopped laughing, and then I sat down and I explained to her. I said, "Isa, Auntie, I want you to understand something. It's because of people like you, you know, that in your respective lines of work, in your respective fields, that you broke down barriers, you know, to occupy those spaces." Means, you know, that today, today we have these opportunities to be able to build, but then we also have the responsibility to set the benchmark higher still, so that the next lot that, you know, that come after us have, you know, our recipe and understand our thought processes, and understand what constraints we faced during.
Yes, Diana Saranga, Vinaka DWAIN for sharing those thoughts, and I think for you young people, you absolutely you know have I think many of us like I think what you're saying as well, you know, like we're standing on like the shoulders of our forefathers or foremothers, you know, our ancestors. So they've done the hard yards, and so it's sort of like a relay, right? So they're passing the baton to us. Now is our time to carry on. But then we have to pass the baton on to the younger generation, the ones behind us. So, wow, I just really love the fact when you mentioned about that benchmark raising. And I think you also touched on the point that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. You know, a lot of that resilience, as you mentioned, and the innovation, it's already there. And
Amen.
you know, as you said, you know, I think it's through you know, the westernization and modernization, the changes that Fiji has gone through, that most of the time, you know, we're always looking to the West for the answers. You know, we're always looking to the other side, but we don't sometimes forget to, you know, look at our own self, you know, look within Fiji, that sometimes the answers is within our very own communities, that we don't usually look to them for answers, you know. So it's just really wonderful how you've been, you know, sharing those, you know, feedback and the empowerment that even you and your team, you know, have to go through, and then the empowerment just carries on. It's sort of like snowball, you know, from your team to the women that you you know, that you impacted in those communities, and even me, you know, living in the diaspora, I'm impacted as well. You know, I get empowered by looking at your photographs. I'm looking, what can I do? You know, so you know, so if DWAIN can do that and his team can do that, what can I contribute to help in one way or another, you know, for any community that I work for or that I want to support? Wow. Vinaka Vakalevu, DWAIN. Now, very quickly, I know you mentioned USP. What other organizations do you collaborate with to make this project work? Do you have any other partners out there?
So in Fiji, Kasabia's hardware, we all know Kasabia's as the hardware company. They're the local service provider for the country program. And, you know, because we import these stoves into the country, and we're importing 60,000 stoves, you know, that arrive into the country in different containers, they're responsible for ensuring that, you know, these stoves are imported and to clear it from customs and to bring it into their massive warehouses and securely store them in the warehouses. to ensuring that, when we're ready to move these stoves into various communities, that we can uniquely identify every single stove, because each stove has a unique serial number that's stenciled on the side of each stove. Um, that's how we know when we come back to, to be able to repair any stoves that need repair or replace any stoves that need to be replaced in future. We'll be able to pull up each person's file, so we know the story of their particular cook stove. That being said, this is potentially one of the largest UNFCCC mechanisms, that's been deployed into the country and into the region successfully. And it doesn't happen with just Kasabias working in isolation. We consult widely with different ministries and different agencies in government, to be able to understand, from the Ministry of Women's side, like what's the gender priorities for our country, and how do we ensure that as we deploy this particular carbon offsets program, that we are making a contribution to the gender space. As we are operating, or in the 1,193 villages in the country, that we are working with Itoke Affairs Board and the Itoke Affairs Trust Fund, to be able to understand protocol, because just because we are Itoke does not give us the license to walk into villages anyhow. We still need to be mindful of our own cultures, of traditional contracts that we form when we drink the Yangona at the Sevu, that we understand due diligence, both from a Western perspective, as well as from a cultural perspective. Then we work with more technical agencies like the Ministry of Forests to understand, the 20 most deforested regions in our country that fall under the emissions reductions program for the country, so that we're working hand in hand with them. And then, that's at a policy level. And then, at a community level, we work with the Sanatan Prabha, we work with, different mandirs that operate around the country. We operate with, we partner up with different churches. We partner up with different women's groups like FemLink and the Song of MARAMA. When we were in the Nandronga Navosa province, that's a hard province. Geographically, it's a really intense province to be able to deploy this sort of program. We had the president of the Song of Marama Nandronga Navosa branch, Andilitia Makutu, stay with us for the duration of our distribution there, to make sure that when we go into different villages, and vararotaki na nito tavi na nito vakavaka ilom ni veikoro, vambimbitalanga ni irtuna kay Nandronga Navosa na nonra dialect in dua tani sera.
Orto no buta orto Matanitu tani.
Okay, man.
Dina sarangado dina.
And then we work with different youth groups like the Hakwa Foundation, which is the youth arm of the Nandronga Navosa province. And there are so many people that are doing work in their communities, and so it's our job as the team at Kasabias that lead the program to make sure that we're not reinventing the wheel, that we are supporting these existing networks, that we are supporting these change makers on the ground, by offering them the opportunity to lead our distribution in their respective realms. So, like in Nandrongan of Wasa, with them, we told them, like, you tell us where you want to go and how you want to do this. We will bring our manpower, and we will bring our vehicles, and we will bring our stoves, and we will bring all of our resources to support you with the distribution. And then we will provide you with a report of every person in every village. So if anyone come back to you and say, hey, nanito stove nito vale, you can pinpoint on your list and say, nanomu ID card de Soliani. Yung sa sentak na no mo form ni sa Soliani na mevandim din taki ni sa soldin na stove. Like that's the level of accountability, yeah.
Man, that's just amazing. Sandy, so you would look at the differences in dialects as well as the geographical region as one of the challenges that your team face?
It's in any developing context, it's both an opportunity as well as a challenge.
Right.
Our responsibility is to make sure that we work with what we have. Working in communities is never perfect, and it's never easy. And we can work for years on end to progress our respective villages and our respective communities, but those hard-fought gains are able to be washed away, in a single night of a tropical 5 cyclone. It's so what we're looking at, from our perspective, is making sure that when we're going into each province, that we understand protocol according to the province, because what is done in Nandrongan of Wasa doesn't necessarily translate to what is done in Ra. And then what is done with Keto na Tovata, it's different, and we need to be culturally aware, even as Itaute people,
and be adaptable.
About and be adaptable, be responsive and responsible.
Oh, now, in terms of the team that you work with, how many of you work for this amazing project, and do all of you work under Kasabia?
Yes. So the core team is 15 that work. 16 that work at Kasabia, but in total there's some 28 of us that that move and operate and make sure that even with the global pandemic of COVID-19 that that hit Fiji in February, March, that we were still able to move these stoves out into villages, that we were still able to observe traditional protocol as well as COVID-19 protocol, to ensure that we move the stoves out as soon as they land in the country, that they shouldn't be held back on account of bureaucracy or shortfall on our part.
Wow, it's really amazing. I really want to, congratulate your team for the ability to collaborate, with, other organizations. And I kind of like the phrase that we've both been using tonight, which is not reinventing the wheel. Yeah, so you're just using existing structures, existing organizations, and you're working alongside them to facilitate the distribution, but at the same time, you're ticking the box for lots of things, like the gender space, and you go to the provincial offices, and even having the, Andi Litia Makutu, as the Marama Benua, to be with you all during the distribution. That is so good to hear.
Oh man, I tell you, Tarisia, every day, when we do what we do, we, you know, as a team, we remind ourselves of the blessing that we have to be able to do this for a living, yeah? But also to continue to refine like what our personal biases look like. Kila sonangona ninda do durilam ni veikoro ngai semberni varau tu turani o kenda na wawa toka wawa ngai lam ni valni mbose na valni songo ito na wawa toka wanga ngalutu dandandambe. But when we go into, like, say, farming communities, you know, sometimes we rush through, even when the district advisory councillor isn't there. You know, we start distributing the stoves to the community. You know, so it's been a process both ways on working within the shifting goalposts that COVID has exacerbated in our country. But also just being clear about personal biases around what leadership looks like. You know, that respect that's accorded to an Itauke Turangni Koro or village mayor in a village setting should translate as well to an Indo-Fijian district advisory councillor who's elected by the farming community to lead. Like these are some things that, you know, as a team ourselves, like these are some of the experiences that we're confronting, that we're being honest about, and that we're continuing to refine, so that, you know, everyone has that one story about you know, cooking outside on the fire. We want to be able to influence positively that next generation of stories, you know, by people that say, oh, you know, yeah, when we cooked on, you know, the earlier models of the cook stove, because, you know, the aim here is to ensure that by the end of this program, we don't need another program on top of another program for someone else to tell our families what to do. The ingenuity is pre-existing. We just need to support our families and support our women a lot better at a village level, and at a, you know, at a household level, to be able to refine the cooking technologies that they've already come up with.
Sandila. Wow. Sa totoo ka saranga, totoo kong goli DWAIN na nomu vamalalamaya. Dona marama, ni kwa, nung sambita daki na itukutukong baleta ng darubital na ni kwa, sa taro sarmo kwa. Era nindo na lang gusto mo? So I'm sure I don't have the opportunity to read some of the comments or the questions from the audience, but I'm sure there are questions on by those who are listening in. Vinaka level to everybody listening in to this wonderful Talanoa with DWAIN, wherever you're logging in from Australia, New Zealand, in England. I know some families in England are listening in, and I know for that side of the globe, you're all waiting for the dawn of the new year. So if someone asks that question, how do we answer, DWAIN, if anyone who is inquiring about wanting to get a stove for themselves, how should we answer, or how can you help us answer that question?
Okay, so, you know, our answer is the same to everyone. As a company, Kasabia's deals with the district advisory councillors in different communities. We deal directly with Turangni Koros. We deal directly with community leaders in informal and squatter settlements to ensure that we can cover everyone at a community level to get a stove. If they reside within a traditional village, a farming community, or informal settlement, I would tell them, get in touch with your community leader and have them contact us, because we don't issue stoves on an individual basis from our shops. They're delivered in bulk directly to the communities, and we run the training with the communities, and then we leave.
Sandina. And with the 60,000 cook stoves, how far are you within that sequence of
Okay.
that number? Have you, are you still planning to distribute more?
So we've distributed just over 40,000 cook stoves
Okay,
to 40,000 women in 10 of the provinces in Fiji. So
right.
that's all the 8 provinces on Viti level, plus Nesana or Lau, Vitke Nesana or Kandavua.
Sandina.
Mm-mm.
Wow. So
So
you
the
have four
next,
more.
so we have just under 20,000
Wow.
just under 20,000 stoves left, and these are already earmarked for distribution in the CBM provinces. So
Mm.
this is Vakaunrove, kito na tekvu iliwi madhuata, o changi toksare mbua, o chombua kito na laksare i Vakaunrove. Nange tinisare
Oh.
i Taviuni.
Oh, Vinaka. Wow. Sa totok kimalambal sa ambichu ko na yang bakirunon doloro sa vulkan tu, eh?
Mhm.
2021 will be your plan of action to complete the quota of 60,000.
Iyo, that's the plan right now.
Right.
But we're working, with our partners on the ground. We're trying to coordinate with different government agencies as well,
Mm.
because the last thing we want to do is to take our entire team of, 20 staff across to Vanuatu and
Yeah.
overwhelm the damaged infrastructure already. Yeah? So,
Right.
so we're on standby right now, and we're just waiting for things to fall into place so that we can move up next month.
Saan din. Wow. Men, Dwayne, now sa talitakan din na nondoro veitalanoa. And I think even when I was talking to you earlier,
Yeah,
you reminded me of, other NGOs and even organizations like, Habitat for Humanity, and other organizations that actually work with, from the village level.
yeah.
It's something, I think, to me, speaking from experience, it's so satisfying, when you actually go out into the communities and you live with them,
Yeah.
even if it's a couple of days, 4 or 5 days, or even a week. The experience itself, it's very enriching, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely. Beyond a doubt. You know, the thing here now is in Fiji, what we're looking at is making sure that while we have a strong NGO and donor agency sector in the country,
Yeah.
that do a lot of work in our communities. Um, we're looking at developing how the private sector in our country, how the private sector in our part of the world also make much stronger contributions and stronger strides towards addressing sustainable development by ensuring that we build the standards, in terms of efficient delivery of different
Mm.
programs to communities. There are things that a NGO might be able to do better in terms of the science, as well as other facets of conservation. And then
Mm.
you have private sector where everything is driven on efficiency. Yeah?
Right.
Um, so from our part, as the Kasabia's group, it's about looking at how we can make that contribution too, and we can do it, with a level and with a standard that's not just benchmarked, to our localities or to our country, but that's a UN standard program.
Wow. Man, that's really, really good. I think I learned so much today when you're talking about the Triple C, Climate Change
Mhm,
Convention.
mhm,
So what you're doing on the ground level, which is on the village level, is actually impacting nationally for Fiji,
mhm.
as well as the region and for the world. That's how I can see the impact of this project has been.
Absolutely. That's, that's why, right in the beginning when we started talking, I had explained globally, the lofty ambitions that we set, we still have a hard time translating those global ambitions into effective and meaningful um, campaigns and programs and initiatives that fit us at a country level, that fit us at a community level, that fit us at a village level, at a tikina level, at a sana level. And so, that's what we're trying to achieve here. We're really burning the midnight oil, and we're doing it not just because we, we're getting paid to do it, but we're doing it because we really want to make sure that the next lot of people that come in and do it after us, that they have very high standards to meet.
Right.
And that we will, that we will have so many more people as a consequence of, this UNFCCC country program, that we will have so many more Fijian people in our country that have the technical capacity to lead different components of these sort of international and global programs, and that they are not restricted to those people that have gone abroad to go and study, or those Fijians that live abroad, but also our families here back home that don't always have the opportunity.
DWAIN, another quick question I want to ask before we conclude. I think before we finish our talanoa, I can give you the time to, say hello or thank you to people that you have met, that you or want to acknowledge to finish off our talanoa. But the next question I have as well here is, now that you're going to be reaching your quota for the 60,000 cook stoves, what will be your next project after that?
Teresi, this project took 6-7 years to get off the ground, to make sure that when we bring something into our country and we bring something into our region that has never been done before at scale, that it's one that ensures that we leave a positive legacy of, being benchmark raising ancestors. Like, we feel on a very personal level that the next set of projects that we do introduce into Fiji, that we do introduce into the Pacific region, that these follow the same sort of characteristics as this program. We're looking at deploying the cook stove program in a few other Pacific Island countries, but we're also, looking at making sure that we can partner directly with different tikinas and different yavusas and landowning units, to work with them on carbon trading, for them to be able to link up with different carbon trading companies abroad, where they can manage their forests, they can develop their community-based companies. Like Okende Viti, we still, the rate at which we've developed, we still have Yasana level companies.
Right.
And that's great. Now, the responsibility on those of us that are leading in this space is to see how we can set up Yavusa level companies, Tikina level companies, land owning unit companies, so that when they declare, the 5,000 acres or 20,000 acres into a carbon forestry program, you know, they channel it through their community company.
Wow, man,
So
that's amazing. Even by hearing about that, I think I can see that we should have another Talanoa session just on that. Because I'm sure there's a lot of our Itoke listeners, you know, listening in, and that's a wonderful challenge that you've put out there. You know, the Yavusa level, you know, companies, you know, the Tikina, and this is something that you know we're challenging our own people here. You know, because I think most of the time we often look at, you know, the non-Itoke, you know, to be the ones leading us in the business world. But now you've said you allowing our own people, our Itoke people, to actually you know, create their own companies and using these terminologies you've mentioned here: carbon offsets, carbon credits. You know, looking at the climate change convention. So a lot of our listeners, I'm sure, you know, listening in, will find all of these words in policy documents, maybe in some of the United Nations reports. But your project, DWAIN, you're actually putting all these words into reality. You know, you actually stepping on the grounds and meeting these women who are cooking on a daily basis and contributing to, you know, the protection of our environment, so that Fiji you know, can still be there for our future generation, knowing about all this climate change and global warming issues that are facing everybody, you know, around the world. So DWAIN, with all your travels around Fiji, any highlight, any particular moment you kind of like always go to that reminds you of all those beautiful travel vlogs you've done?
Man, Teresi, first of all, Namosi, your home province. There is nothing like the interior and the heartbeat of Fiji's main island. When you're in Namosi, when you're standing high up right in the interior of Navosa, and you're looking into you know, the mountain ranges of the Mba province, towards Nandarivatu, towards Ra, and then, you know, when you come in from the Nausori highlands in the Mba province from Nandi,
Bukuya that way.
When you go up into the highlands, and then you're standing on top of you know, the highest points in the highlands there, and you're going, in one day you're crossing through 3 different provinces, and not 3 different provinces like driving around the coast. No, this is, you're driving in the middle of the interior. You know, there is something to be said about how well organized, you know, Namosi province is in terms of the infrastructure, the road access. You know, the road is not tar sealed in Namosi, but it's graveled, but it's graded. It's graded often. So even the Priuses, there are people that live right up the top, Nayau, the furthest village in Namosi, that own Priuses. And then they zooming past us through Namosi, like, you know, and we're driving twin cabs, and they're zooming past us like we're the Prius and they're the twin cab. You know, and then we go to like Kandavu. Kandavu is, I tell you, when I came back from Kandavu, I finally understood what the term Kandavu jersey meant. The amount of kanikani I came back with. You know, Kandavu is one of those provinces that, just like Namosi, has enjoyed a level of development where, you know, when you talk about what an ideal home or what an ideal village looks like, number one, that they have a proper toilet and sewage system. Number two, that they have a proper kitchen. You know, like when we have these discussions as a family, as a community, as a developing country, like these are some of the things that we have to consider after we've gone past, lofty ambitions and policies. It's the very basics around health and sanitation, around welfare. And, we have provinces like Kandavu and Namosi, in my opinion, where their level of development, Namosi in terms of the bridges, because a lot of the villages in Namosi, for some odd reason, they have to just build them right next to the other side of the river. They can't build them on the right side where the roads are. They have to just build them right opposite. So, they have, incredible infrastructure in the province where electricity goes right up to the furthest village in Namosi. The roads are graded. They have good bridges, for those villages that need to cross over. And likewise with Kandavu, who have, really, really structurally sound churches. And churches, for me, are a good sign of development at the village level, because that tells you during a time of natural disaster, that's where the community can go to. Like that when they don't have electrical power lines that come through to their villages, that they have solar. That a lot of the villages in Kandavu, they have cement footpaths right throughout. Like for me, like when we talk about memorable experiences, like those rank quite highly in the fact that, when we discuss what an ideal village or an ideal community in Fiji should look like, for me, number one, proper toilet, proper kitchen for the women to cook in, that it should have a health center, that it should have some form of energy generation other than kerosene, because kerosene at the end of the day can be, the fumes. So I'd rank, for me personally, I'd rank Namosi and Kandavu quite high, but also because they're the ones that gave me the most amount of grog.
So a disclaimer to those of you who are listening in, I did not bribe DWAIN at all. That was a very honest answer. Vinaka, DWAIN, for sharing that beautiful, stories and experiences. So to conclude our talanoa tonight, are there, certain, people or organizations that you would like to acknowledge, or just to say something to them, or anyone that you, have in mind that you want to say something to, or anything else that you may have missed out in our earlier talanoa?
Okay, not valuable. As we've been talking today, and for those of our families around the world that have the opportunity to tune into Talanoa with Dr. T this evening, the responsibility is not just for some of us. This is all of us. And, I honestly hope that after you listen to a few bits of our Talanoa this evening, that you will call home to your families in the villages, that you will call home to your families in different farming communities, and that you will call Baini, from the Yasa and find out, did they get a stove? And if they did get a stove, are they using it? And if they are using it, to reinforce to them the importance of us transitioning away from, outdoor fireplaces that are just open, that are not as thermally efficient, because at the end of the day, we want to keep developing our country and keep developing the type of tools that we hand over to, first of all, women, but just as importantly, women in rural and remote communities. So, I'd just make that request. Please call home to your families, call home to your Turangni Koros, to your district advisory councillors, to your community leaders, and, you know, champion the fact that we need to encourage our mothers and our grandmothers and our aunts to use these stoves, and then to continue to innovate those existing stoves that we are already coming up with in the different villages. Iyo, sa kwa ngaya.
Wow. Nakawakalev Sara Dwayne, I think on behalf of everyone that are listening in tonight, or maybe those of you listening in from Europe and the United Kingdom, will be this morning for them. Just like to say a big Vinaka Vakalev to you, Dwayne, for your leadership, for representing our young people, and you know, being the voice of the millennials, is what your auntie said. But to acknowledge the wonderful contribution that the millennials have been doing so far, and I know you will do so great, you know, in years to come. And also extend our Vinaka Vakalevu to your team, to the 28 of your team in Kasabias. And yeah, we just wanted to acknowledge the wonderful work you do. I know traveling is not easy. You have to leave your own families to be, you know, out in very remote areas. But I know that when you come back, your families are there with open arms to welcome you back. But you also come back with amazing memories, you know, and you've made a lot of friends. As you know, everywhere you go, I'm sure when you go to Lambasa or Nosoro or Lotoka, people will be calling out to you because they will remember you from all the villages that you've gone to, and the hospitality that were extended to you and your team. So on that note, I just wanted to personally also say my Vinaka Vakalevu to you, Dwayne, for saying yes to my request for us to have veitalanoa. But I have to tell you, and for our listeners, this is not the last time. First and the last. You will see Dwayne again in another couple of weeks or maybe next month to get some update, if that's okay with you, Dwayne. Will that be okay?
Ndono Vinaka. Ndono Vinaka.
Oh.
And I'd just like to, you know, to say it is, as much as we do here, in Fiji, it you know, it's almost like a bit of encouragement when we see people, you know, like yourself, that has, you know, gone on to reach, you know, the highest levels of academia, in, you know, getting your PhD and then becoming an assistant professor, and not just an assistant professor, but at an American university. You know, like, it's important that we have role models, and role models that look like us, you know, that talk like us, you know, and that understand quite intimately how much we go through in being able to trying to understand these global concepts and these global you know, standards, and trying to make it work for those of us that were brought up in our educational system here. Like like the other day, I had the opportunity to share with you know, a few other people from Samoa and Papua New Guinea about the UNFCCC carbon program, and how the audits for the program are quite rigorous, and the different layers of compliance that we have to meet, and, you know, the technical programs behind it. And, you know, they were quite overwhelmed. And I was sharing with them, I said, you know, I want you to know that if a diploma graduate, you know, can do it, and not even a diploma graduate in thermal energy or cook stoves or anything technical, but a diploma graduate in development journalism can do it, And you know, I studied my whole life in Fiji, in Lautoka. I went to Lautoka Primary School, and then I went to Central College in Lautoka. If those of us here can do it, you know, and meet head on all of these complex issues and these complex concepts, then so can you. But like I was just telling them, I said, it's so important that you find your mentors, because you will get stuck, but you need to keep looking forward to those that are already paving the way. And to be patient with ourselves in our growth and our learning.
No, you're absolutely right, you know, and I think Fiji, we are so blessed, you know, that there's, young people like you who, you know, very, very talented, but then you use your talent to give back. And I think that's something that I actually wanted to do through my platform of Talanoa with Dr. T, is to give back. You know, give back to my people, you know, even though I've lived overseas for over 20 years now. It looks like the way I feel about Fiji, you know, gets stronger all the time. You know, that even though people say, you know, you in America now, or you in New Zealand now, in Australia, but for some reason, I think I'll speak on behalf of the Fijian diaspora, that even though some of us live in Norway, my nephew lives in Norway, and you know, in so many Fijians in Canada and in England, but many of us still have a heart in Fiji. So one way or another, you know, we will, you know, contribute, you know, back to our village in different shapes and forms. But some of us are so touched and so moved by the work that you do. And for you taking photos and, you know, sharing those beautiful smiles, you know, through your, you know, your photojournalism, which is so impactful, because the use of social media, you know, it's everywhere. You reach so many more people than if you use, you know, either, you know, the websites or any other technical platform. But social media is the most effective.
I so agree with you. I mean, when I started using social media, like at a certain point, like I stopped using my social media for putting up personal photos of myself, or you know, to share photos of me and my friends sailing. Like I stopped publicizing about my personal life, and I just started telling stories about different development challenges that we were facing in our country through my Facebook page, my Twitter handle, my Instagram page, my LinkedIn page. You know, it's incredible the response that social media is playing, and for us to be aware that, you know, as we continue to be these benchmark raising ancestors, that we understand that we need to use the tools that we have, because if we wait for some magical solution to fall from, you know, the skies, it doesn't work that way. You know, if our ancestors, you know, cut down trees and floated on logs across vast ocean spaces that, you know, modern sea explorers would consider, you know, a suicide mission, you know, if our ancestors could have made that voyage, then what about us? You know, what's the tree? What's that floating log for us? Is it our phone? Is it our you know, our Dell laptop that takes 40 minutes to start up and has to be connected to the PowerPoint for the whole time we're using it? Langana power, langana laptop. But you know, what are those tools? And being aware of making sure that we accurately portray these stories, that we don't get caught up on sensationalism, that we remember that in the process of telling these stories, these are stories of we. These are not stories of I. And people that come from communal settings know this best. that we do this work as one of the many parts, as a member of a big team, that we don't necessarily sit at the head of the table, but that the mat is round, just like the round mats behind me.
And I think something too I learned from you, DWAIN, you mentioned that your background is in journalism, and then now you are in the field of talking about climate change. You're talking about carbon credits, kind of another field that may be out of your comfort zone, but yet you embrace the situation and you took on the challenge and you kind of say, bring it on. I will work in that space and I will help my people to understand what the United Nations or other international organization is talking about. Because I'm sure many of them, if you say carbon credits, they don't know what we're talking about. But through you and through your 28 colleagues, you are able to translate those technical terms to make it more effective for them to say, if I cook something today, I'm contributing to that whole discussion that may be taking place in Paris or in Geneva. So that's wonderful. You've actually taught me, and I'm sure the others who are listening in too. DWAIN. And I know after Veitalanoa, I will be reading through some of the questions that some of our viewers will be posing or posting down on the page. So my apologies to our listeners. If I didn't get a chance to answer any of your questions, I will do it after this. And if it's okay with you, DWAIN, if some of the questions come, I can be able to channel it to you and you can be able to answer it for them.
Vinaka.
Okay. So Vinaka vale Sara DWAIN. Au sana vako mo dito kayani. Vinaka vakalev Sara for giving up your time on a very special evening like this. I don't know whether you have a glass of wine somewhere hidden from the camera. I have to ask whether it's Ngona ni Kadavo or Ngona ni Namosi. So
Ngona Nimbua.
So I think at this point, I'd like to acknowledge and thinking of our families back in Vanolevu, to the families on the island of Kia, the village of Yaro. 2018, our Vengia project visited the village of Yaro. And right now, as we speak, we are putting together some assistance for our women and children on the village of Yaro. So if anyone from Kia is listening in, we're saying bula from Australia, New Zealand, and Hawaii. So hopefully we can be able to provide some assistance at this difficult time that you're all going through. Yes, Vinaka vakalev Sara, Vinaka DWAIN for your time, and Vinaka vakalev to all our listeners. Ni mo demanda.
Ni mo toka.
Yes, Vinaka mo demanda DWAIN.
Mo